Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be talking about voltage in Nodal and how to find the voltage and finding the current further on. So let's just say we have a circuit right here. We have source 1 is 12 volts and the R1 is 2 ohms. We have a current which is 3 amps and we have R2 4 ohms, E source 2 is 6 volts and it's connected all to ground. Now first thing you need to remember is label everything, and then we'll move on to the second step. Let's just first label everything. Now we need to find the reference point and the voltage nodal. In this case, we're going to assume that the reference point is the ground, which is easier, which is always 0 volts. So it's connected to this one, this, and this. It's connected to all this, which is going to be 0 volts. Which is the reference. Okay. Now the voltage node is going to be this one. Since it's easier to visualize, it's connected to all these 3 branches, and these 3 branches have currents going through them. Now to identify the currents, we're going to label them. We can assume for branch 1, we can assume that the current is leaving. When it's leaving, we know it's positive. That's the second thing you gotta keep in mind. The currents leaving the node is positive, currents entering the node is negative. So in this case, I source 1 is gonna be negative, entering that node. And then this one, we can assume it's leaving just to make our life easier. That current is positive. Okay, now we have fully labeled the circuit. I'm just call this VA. Now we have fully labeled the circuit. Now we can start solving for voltage for VA. Now through doing KVL and finding the current on that. So we can do VA by doing KVL, which equals 1. So to find the current on the first branch, we usually do Ohm's law by doing I is equal to E source 1 over R1. But in this case, we have another voltage, which is VA. So we're going to do VA minus the E source 1 over R1. That gets you the current on branch 1. Same thing for branch 2. Since it's entering the node, it's negative. So it'll be negative I source 1 plus, same thing, VA minus E source 2 over R2 equals to 0 volts. Now, you got the first line. Second thing you gotta remember is the constants and the I sources always goes to the right. So in this case, let's just rearrange the equation and play with it. We're gonna do VA over R1 minus E source 1 over R1 minus I source 1 plus VA over R2 minus E source 2 over R2 is equal to 0 volts. Now it's easier to visualize. We can see the constants, we can see the I sources. The constants are always the source over the resistor, which is I source 1 over R1 and E source 2 over R2. These go to the right with the I source. Now the third line should look like this. VA over R1 plus VA over R2 equals to positive I source 1 plus E source 1 over R1 plus E source 2 over R2. This is perfect. Now you have that. Just factor out the VA since that's what you're solving for. You're left with, if you look closely, if you factor out the VA, you're left with 1 over R1, which gives you what? The inverse of R1, just to the negative 1, which gives you the conductor of it. So it'll be VA brackets R1 to the negative 1 plus R2 to the negative 1 equals to I source 1 plus the I source 1 plus the constant. So I'm just going to copy this, put it right here. There you go. So you have the constants on this side and you have the resistors. Now to get VA alone, just divide this by both sides. These two cancels and you're left with this. Your final line should equal to this. VA is equal to that, which is we're going to grab right here. It's going to equal to that, this, over the resistance, or the conductors in this case, which is these two. So that. There you go. Your last line to finding the voltage nodal should equal to that after rearranging and solving for VA. Now just sub in all the values that you got. So second step is sub in all the values. Okay, so we're just going to get this equation right here. Perfect. Get that. And then just sub in. So we have VA is equal to I source 1, which was 3 amps, plus E source 1 was 12 volts, over R1 was 2 ohms, plus E source 2 was 6 volts, over 4 ohms, all over the inverse of 2 ohms plus 4 ohms inverse. Plug that in your calculator and you should get VA is equal to 14 volts. Now, you got the volt. That's the first step you should be getting. You got the volts. Now, to find the currents on each branch is very simple. You do Ohm's law, or you can plug in one of these equations you got. Let's say you're looking for current IR1. To get IR1, you sub it in this equation. So it'll be 14 minus 12 over 2, get you that current.